The university archives housed in Hornbake Library at the University of Maryland are a central source for learning about campus history and how the past actions of students have shaped the university we know today. Through its objects, the archive preserves many important moments and movements of students challenging the university administration. The history of campus activism is complicated, though. Students engaged in activism for a variety of reasons. These motivations are not always completely visible in the objects that have been chosen for preservation in the archive. The archival materials displayed in this video provide a window into several significant moments of activism on campus. This short narrative of select student activist events presented here is only an introduction to these stories, however, and we hope they prompt you to learn more about your campus history. As you hear these stories, we ask that you also consider those perspectives and stories that are less often preserved. Ask yourself whose histories are being told, and through whose eyes are these stories being seen and interpreted? Whose perspectives are being left out? In the fall of 1964, students at the University of California at Berkeley started the free speech movement, a successful effort to force the University of California system to officially recognize student rights to conduct political activities and speech and demand the administration lift all bans prohibiting such political pursuits. This movement adapted tactics from the civil rights movement, and thousands participated in the months-long series of mass demonstrations. The free speech movement not only inspired students at other institutions, but provided a framework for student activists to make demands on their own administrations. 1964 was also the year of Freedom Summer, the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the beginnings of major nationwide demonstrations against the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. In comparison with the activity at Berkeley, these movements were slower to reach the University of Maryland. Before the late 60s, the University of Maryland's population was overwhelmingly white, with less than 2% of its students, including people of color. Progress toward diversifying the student body was very slow compared to many other higher education institutions. The first Black student graduated in 1951, and the first Black woman graduated in 1959. The University of Maryland remained dedicated to maintaining a white upper and middle class student body throughout the 1950s and into the 1960s. In 1965, student activists started a chapter of the leftist group Students for a Democratic Society, or SDS, on UMD's campus. The chapter membership remained small until its dissolution in the early 70s, but left a lasting impression on the campus. It is during this time that small protests arise on campus concerning topics such as campus housing conditions, the Vietnam War, and racial inequality. While some student activism concerned opposition to the Vietnam War, much of the tension on campus stemmed from the university administration's failure to accept and accommodate the social and cultural change occurring at UMD. In the mid to late 1960s, several events commenced a shift in campus culture. Upward Bound was established on UMD's campus in 1966. This program had been instituted by the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964 to provide college preparation and support to first-generation college students. This program slowly ushered in some change to the demographics of the student population, enabling more students of color, particularly Black students, to enroll. In the fall of 1968, the university estimated Black students made up about 2% of the student body, which was approximately 600 students at the time. This was also the year when UMD started to see more large-scale demonstrations. In October, the Black Student Union occupied the Home Economics Building, which is now Marie Mount Hall, to protest a nutrition study which excluded Black students. The faculty researchers claimed that there were genetic differences between Black and white students, and therefore had to include only white participants to prevent perceived inconsistencies in their sample size. The Black Student Union denounced the study, and because of their efforts, the Home Economics Department agreed to desegregate future studies. Beyond this incident, the Black student population charged the university more broadly with negligence in responding to discrimination, including housing discrimination, discrimination in faculty opportunities, and discrimination in classes. In March of 1969, the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare determined that the state of Maryland was operating a racially segregated system of higher education. This was a violation of the Title IX Act of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The department was required to submit a desegregation plan to the Office of Civil Rights. This assessment motivated the campus's Black Student Union and its supporters to further confront the administration and demand necessary change. A few months later, this discontent with the university administration was on public display during the 1969 convocation, when 200 Black students silently stood up and filed out in protest of the university's lack of action on behalf of Black students and faculty. President Elkins later met with the Black Student Union leadership, as well as the leaders of Black student organizations from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and Maryland State College, and discussed plans for an Afro-American Studies program and how the university could better support Black students and faculty. Protests continued to occur on campus at this time, but they were small in size and did not result in violence. But the Skinner incident of March 23, 1970 was a significant act of resistance on UMD's campus, which set the tone for the protests that followed, as well as the university response to these acts of resistance. Despite its influential role in shaping the character of future protests on campus, the Skinner incident had nothing to do with prominent social movements, but rather concerned two beloved professors. In March 1970, the philosophy department announced that popular professors Dr. Roelofs and Dr. Goldstone would be dismissed due to lack of publications. In the following weeks, students criticized the department and planned to demonstrate their support for the professors. On March 23rd, 300 to 500 students began to occupy Skinner Hall in protest of the decision, barricading the doors at 4 p.m. Close to midnight, the university called in both county and state police, who arrived in riot gear to suppress the nonviolent protest. By 4 a.m., the police had arrested 87 protesters for trespassing. Although the university's official chronology of events cited damage to vending machines and sandwich ovens and some tables and chairs, the Baltimore Sun reported that there was no physical evidence of damage or destruction in the building. Records in the university archives also indicate that the administration knew what students were planning to do beforehand and refused to provide an adequate platform for discussion. The university ultimately dismissed any attempt to grant amnesty to the students, in direct opposition to the philosophy department's support of the nonviolent demonstration. After the Skinner incident, mass demonstrations on campus increased in size and number, some with thousands of students acting together in resistance to authority. Unfortunately, this increase in activism also brought an increase of property destruction and acts of police brutality. In May 1970, there were mass protests against the U.S. invasion of Cambodia, which began with storming the armory in an anti-ROTC demonstration. At the time, it was the goal of a number of campus groups to get ROTC off campus. Eventually, thousands of students occupied large portions of campus and multiple times occupied Route 1. Police responded with violence against protesters, using canines, tear gas, and batons. Students fought back, throwing rocks and bottles at the police. Ultimately, classes were canceled, and the governor ordered the National Guard to occupy campus. The protests lasted 12 days, leading to dozens of student arrests. During this time, the National Guard released more tear gas at student protesters, including shooting tear gas into a student dorm. Some students at Maryland began wearing gas masks as they moved around campus, since there was often tear gas residue in the air. Many other groups of students were beginning to mobilize during this time of heightened demand for change. One such group was the Gay Student Alliance, formed in 1969 and active in the early 70s before re-emerging most visibly in the 1990s. In the mid-1980s, students organized to protest UMD's endowment investment in companies financially tied to the South African apartheid government. students demanded the university withdraw its financial support of apartheid. The Campus Divestment Coalition held demonstrations on campus, pictured here, and routinely met with the university administration to voice their opposition. During one demonstration that sought to expose Maryland's connections with the oppression of apartheid, students built shantytowns on McKeldin Mall, meant to simulate and showcase the living conditions of Black South Africans. Ultimately, their efforts proved successful as the Board of Regents voted to divest the $11.1 million the university had invested in such companies by the end of 1989. These student activist movements have impacted university operations and shaped today's campus life. Student protest is not just a thing of the past. More recent groups acting for change on campus include Black Terps Matter, 17 for Peace and Justice, Plumas, the Fearless Student Employees Coalition, Mary Purg, and many more. Like those of the past, these present student groups continue to push for important rights and causes that will shape the university's future. The University Archives at Hornbake Library houses and actively collects evidence that preserves these stories, allowing us a window into the material and individual experiences of students. Just this broad overview of student activism can somewhat obscure the emotions of individual students. Anxiety, excitement, hope, anger, fear. No matter their connection to the movements, students on campus were impacted by these activities and surrounding events, and it is important to remember that these are individual people. I encourage you to reflect on your own experiences with campus activism while thinking about these movements of the past, whether that experience is through organizing yourself, through friends, or through the impact activism has had in shaping the university, campus life, and the student experience today. How can these experiences be recorded in the archive? What aspects of experience do you imagine to be more difficult to preserve? Considering the limitations of what and how history is preserved is vital when embarking on any research project using archival evidence.